Namaskar and a very warm welcome once again, viewers. We met you just yesterday for an amazing session, something that we are so privileged and proud to have done. We were in conversation with the mystic and setting the tone for the International Yoga Day. There was a whole narrative, therefore, built as to how yoga is one of the treasures that India, as an ancient civilization, has given to the world. Incidentally, viewers, today we are then on the International Day of Yoga. And I must tell you a bit about the history as to how this day came to be. Even though yoga, as part of our culture, civilization, has been part of us for centuries, actually millennia, but it took a very different kind of an effort to find a recognition in the United Nations for the world to acknowledge it. In September 2014, during his address to the United Nations General Assembly, the Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi ji, proposed that June 21st be declared as the International Yoga Day. The move was eventually backed by 177 countries and it was adopted in nearly 75 days. That's kind of historic for anything to get adopted at the United Nations, backed by so many countries in such a short time. And that's how, since 2015, 21st June, we are celebrating 21st June as the International Day of Yoga. But that doesn't mean that that's when it came to be. As I mentioned, it's been there. It's been a part of our old fabric of the ancient Vedic wisdom of life. It touches you at the physical levels, it touches you at the mental levels, and it touches you at the spiritual levels. So it's so all encompassing that incorporating the various elements of yoga as part of your daily existence is supposed to take you many notches higher in terms of what you are supposed to be as a human. We in the Ministry of Tourism are trying to reach out and touching on few of the dimensions. We all understand that the depth of yoga is so much that we can only merely touch. And we are going to just excite you and kind of tempt you to delve deeper, whether it could be the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, or whether it could be the Vedic wisdom, or whether it could be Sushruta talking about the medical part of it. So today we are going to talk about the more the physical and the mental parts of it. Yesterday, Sadhguruji set the tone for the more philosophical part of it at times, and of course, also touching the consciousness levels. Tomorrow, again, we shall be coming back to you with another demonstration from a young practitioner. And on Tuesday, as part of the International Yoga Day, we're going to keep talking about the foods and how to create a healthy ecosystem for the human body, mind, and soul. So today, carrying on the International Yoga Day, I should say a camp that we are trying to do for 5 days, is Achal Mehra. Achal has been a passionate yoga practitioner for many, many years now. He is otherwise a IIM graduate, and he drifted into picking yoga as his full-time profession. He is a CEO of a company, Greenway. It's an eco company. He'll tell you more about it maybe later. And he also runs a resort in Madhya Pradesh. And what he does there, I'm not going to tell you yet. We're going to keep a few surprises along the way as to what Achal does and how and why yoga is a treasure of India, and specifically from the tourism perspective as a generator of interest for not only Indians but people from all over the world. What and how should we leverage yoga is also an aspect that we're going to talk to Achal about today. Achal, the web stage is all yours. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Rupinder. Namaste. So we start with, talking about in ancient Indian wisdom, and Namaste is the first symbol of our wisdom. So it's a unique greeting in the sense that when we say Namaste, we say that we are bowing to the divine within you. So on this International Yoga Day, I send you a warm Namaste from me, bowing to the divine within you. So yoga is, really an Indian treasure, an ancient Indian treasure, but still, people understand it in a very limited perspective, I feel. Yoga is primarily understood as asana, which is one of the parts of the 8 parts of yoga. So yoga is an ashtanga or 8. There are 8 limbs to it, and I will talk to you later about it. But let's step back to what life is, how life has evolved, and to understand yoga in its real and deep perspective. If you look around, life has evolved from consciousness in the rocks and minerals to a plant life and to animal life, and till this journey of evolution we are almost pre-programmed. So there is nothing varying in one dog from the other. Maybe just a physical characteristic may vary a little bit, but a dog is a dog and a plant is a plant, and a rock is a rock. When we come to a human life, there is a very large spectrum of possibilities with this human life. So on one end, you could you be a Hitler who was conditioned in such a way that he felt that his race was superior and he was superior to other human beings, and that led him to kill millions of human beings. While on the other hand, we have a Buddha or many other mystics who are like Buddha, who have reached their full potential as a human being, and thus they are lighting the lamps of consciousness in other human beings and showing them the path of self-realization or the path of liberation, which in our ancient wisdom is called nirvana or is called moksha. So yoga is actually a journey to self-realization, of which asana is one part. So let me give you the entire perspective. We start, yoga has 8 parts. Two parts we call yam and niyam, which are external to us. Then we have asana, pranayam, which are more to do with our own body. And then we have pratyahar, it's an internal conversion, internal turning inwards. And then we have what we call Bahirang Yoga, which is the Dharana, Dhyan, and Samadhi. And Samadhi is the final stage of a human being, which a Buddha has attained. So within this spectrum, there are 8 different parts. Though we know yoga as mostly as asana and as pranayam, which is though a limited view, but it is also an important view. And because if I will give you an analogy of a music instrument, you have to tune the music instrument perfectly so that it can play good music. So the parts of asana or pranayam are more like fine tuning the instrument so that you can play a good music, you can achieve your full potential with your body. So as I mentioned, yoga is not a limited view of what we understand it as, either as asana or pranayam or just as a physical exercise, but it has a very deep dimension to it. It addresses all our dimensions, for example, from physical to mental and emotional and to spiritual. So this is the whole spectrum of yoga, and India has got a treasure of ancient texts and mystics who have guided us in this direction. One of the greatest mystics in terms of the yoga and its wisdom was Patanjali, and he actually codified all the knowledge that existed till his time into Yoga Sutras. There are about 192 Yoga Sutras in his famous book, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, and they guide us from right step 1 to Samadhi. It's like a systematic approach towards to reaching there. So again, I would emphasize again that yoga is not just a a physical exercise or limited to asana or pranayam. It's a whole way of life which leads you to your full potential as a human being. So Rupinder, this was my perspective and understanding on yoga, and then I think people should start to look at life, because life has its complexities, its challenges, and ultimately you have to address each moment of your life. It's a series of moments life, and then you have to address it with your full intensity, full integrity, so that you can live a life of celebration. You can live a life which is more joyful than what you understand it as, and that's where the journey of yoga begins.
Yes, I think that's a very enlightening beginning, viewers. And Achal, there are so many, as you already mentioned, there are so many misconceptions, I would call them, that it's too gentle a way to remain fit. So people will actually go to running or gym and feel that till you did not do those things, then yoga cannot really move you to lose weight or remain fit, or that it's a soft form of exercise. And we are here talking of the physical dimension of yoga. How true are these thoughts or conceptions, or are they misconceptions?
These are, there are a lot of misconceptions about yoga, and I will talk about a few. First is that, it's a very gentle, form of physical exercise. So let's say if we divide, our existence into physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual part, let's address the physical part first. In physical part, you have, various, again, dimensions of your physical fitness. One is flexibility, another balance. The other two dimensions are, your strength and your endurance. So people feel that yoga is just about, flexibility and balance. Whereas, which is completely a misconception, because, for example, if you have to do, and let's say 100 Surya Namaskars during 1 hour, then that will test your endurance to the limit. If you have to hold a plank for 3 to 5 minutes, that will strengthen your, strength completely. So it's a misconception, and then people relate it with, oh, it's just because there are more women doing yoga, people think that it's an exercise form for yoga. But I have seen many even hardcore Bollywood celebrities who have come to our yoga house in Bombay, and who had this kind of a misconception, and once they started doing it, they realized that it trains all the aspects of physical fitness dimensions as well. So people actually who are training for even Ironman are also coming to yoga house and training in yoga, so that it can equip them better to test their endurance. So I would say
I was going to say that, can we have a short demonstration of a few asanas? I know it's not easy to demonstrate a lot on a web screen, but if you could do the basics, and especially in times of COVID, I think we need a lot more of yoga.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think I will start with because there is a vast audience, I will try to address a few things which a beginner can do, but which are very important. Whether I am doing a session for triathletes or I am doing a session for beginners, I always start with what's called the Sukshma Vyayam. Our blockage of energy is mostly on our joints. So when we wake up in the morning, the energy is lost in our wrist, in our shoulders, in our neck joints, all the joints. So what one should do for a start is to address all the joints. So when you start a session, it is the best that you sit in Vajrasan or you sit cross-legged. Let's say we sit in Vajrasan. The moment we sit in Vajrasan, we are already addressing our knee joint and our ankle joint. Now I will tell you a few Sukshma Vyayams which you can always do to begin your session with. First thing is to just balance your breath, and you do something which is called Nadi Shodhan, so which is alternate nostril breathing. So you breathe in from one nostril and you breathe out from the other nostril. You do this process a few times, and that will kind of balance you. That will also center you. If you have many thoughts which are connecting you to the outside world, this simple process of Nadi Shodhan will bring your attention inward. Then what you can do is just address your wrist joint. So wrist joint, you can just hold your palm in your hand. You just pull it gently towards yourself, and then you pull it down. This will kind of activate your wrist. You can do it with the other palm as well, and then you can just push it down. So this, you are beginning to address your joints. You can then do what's called internal rotation, or Gulf Naman in Sanskrit, the internal rotation of your wrist joint. This will activate any blocked energy in your wrist. Now, other thing I always want to give you attention to, yoga is all about, and life is all about being aware. So don't do anything mechanically. Be aware of this movement. Like for example, I can move my hand like this, but if I move my hand with awareness, then there is more grace in it, and you're training your awareness. So internal rotation of your wrist joint and the external rotation of your wrist joint with awareness is what will activate more energy. After that, I do a simple shoulder rotation. So these are the exercises which everybody should do. Just holding your shoulders, stretching your elbows backwards, expanding your chest so that you breathe more oxygen in. And then you, with awareness, you just rotate your shoulder joint. Any blocked energy in the shoulder joint will kind of, open up and will start to flow more smoothly through it. So just the external rotation, and then we can rotate it internally. At the beginning of any yoga session, whether you are an advanced athlete or not, I would always advise you to do these few things. And then you can bring your attention to your neck joint, turning it gently to your right, and then turning it gently to your left. I mean, I'm doing it fast, but you always hold it for a few seconds so that the benefit to that joint is deeper. Then you can simply do a chin to chest, stretching the neck upwards, dropping your neck to the ear, either side. So this will activate your neck joint. After the neck, what I do in the beginning, your spine is the most important, part of your nervous system. It needs to be active. So I do just a spinal twist, bringing your left palm across the right knee. The right palm goes behind the spine, and you just twist sideways by pressing the palm inwards. And you do it the other way around. So this is, at the beginning of any session, activating your joints is the first part. So that is the first part that I would recommend any beginner to do. And then after that, I would recommend them to do a Surya Namaskar. I don't know if we have a clip which can be played, because I sent a clip. Rupinder, is there a clip?
Yeah, you want us to play the video at this stage?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, cool. So Team Many PD, could we kindly have the video?
If you are not able to play the video, I will do a live demo. So, whatever,
We'll be doing it. Just 1 minute.
We'll probably do both, Achal.
Yeah. Demo.
So we have the video first, and then we can have the live demo too.
Yeah. So, these are the simple things which a yoga beginner in yoga practice can do. Surya Namaskar is almost like a complete workout, because there are 12 postures which take your body, which contract your body and which expand your body. So even from a COVID, point of view, where, you need to improve your immunity, and immunity is so dependent on our lymphatic system. So lymphatic fluid in the body does not have any other kind of pump. So it flows more, it flows better when you do a Surya Namaskar.
Yeah. Achal, if you could just elaborate a bit more on, because we all understand the benefits of the Surya Namaskar, and yet it would be nice to know a little more detail as to how it really works at the three different planes of the human existence in aligning not
Yeah.
just the body but also the mind.
Yeah. So you know the Surya Namaskar is it's a part of, we call it Vinyasa, in the sense that you flow from one posture to the other posture. And if you look at it, the right way to do it is to train your breath. So when you are expanding your body, for example, the first posture is just standing like this with your palms folded, and when you expand the body, you breathe in. So this is the second posture in it. You are breathing in and you are expanding your chest. So you are breathing in, and then the third posture is bending forward, and then you breathe out. So when you are doing it right, in the right sequence with your breath, the contraction and the expansion of breath will improve not only the energy level, but if you see the entire structure of 12 sequence or 12 postures of Surya Namaskar, then your spine is also bending backward and forward, and in these contraction and in these movements, the energy level increases, and also you are able to burn about 12 calories in every round of sun salutation. So again, initially you were talking about whether yoga works on weight loss or not. Actually, if you do 108 Surya Namaskars, you will lose about 1/3 of a kg in one session itself. But yeah, for that, you have to do Surya Namaskar for almost 1 hour. And if you do that, you would be able to lose about, 300 grams of weight. So you can actually test it yourself, and but it's something you need to have endurance for. And I won't recommend people to do it right in the beginning, but you can start building up the practice of Surya Namaskar over a period of time.
So, Achal, this time I must remind the viewers the theme this time, viewers, because the world is currently dealing with the pandemic. And so the theme this time is yoga at home and yoga with family. And that therefore brings us to a key element, particularly for 2020, apart from doing everything else related to the asanas, is what is it specifically that we could do through yoga to brace ourselves to deal with the impact of COVID, or just even if it was hovering around you, how to make sure it doesn't really enter you.
Right. So see, Rupinder, and the viewers, that there are two kinds of fluids flowing in our body. One is of course the blood which flows, and then there is a pump for the blood. So your heart is actually pumping the blood, and it is reaching all corners, and it is reaching all cells, and it is nourishing them. But apart from the blood, there is also lymphatic fluid in our body, which is fighting, which is resisting with any kind of infection, any kind of pathogens entering our body. And that lymphatic fluid, unfortunately, does not have a pump inside. And to move and spread that lymphatic fluid to improve our immunity, you need to have certain mechanisms which can really improve which can help the flow of that fluid. So one is simply doing some kind of pranayama, because when you are expanding your chest and closing it, not only you are getting more oxygen through the process of pranayama, which is nourishing the cells inside the body and creating more energy, but also contracting and expanding the body. So I'll just tell you a few things you can do to improve your immunity at the time of COVID. So I will tell you one simple pranayam called Anulom Vilom. So you just put your two fingers onto forehead, use one thumb to block your right nostril. So your right thumb is blocking your right nostril, and then you take a deep breath from your left nostril in. Expand, do it slowly so that you can maximize the oxygen inside the lungs. Once you have taken the breath in, you hold the breath inside for as long as you can. So the longer you hold the breath at the level of alveoli inside the lungs, there is an exchange of carbon and oxygen happening. The longer you hold your breath, the deeper is the exchange of carbon and oxygen, and the faster is the oxygenation of the body. So you take a deep breath in, then you hold it, and then you close the other nostril, and you breathe out very slowly with control so that you also control the muscles of your lungs. It's not that you should avoid breathing out just immediately. So this is a process I would advise that you do it for at least 5 minutes first and maybe increase it to 10 minutes. That will see the ultimate objective of the body is to, have more energy in it. And that energy comes from, the cellular level creating more energy, and oxygen plays a very important role in it. So the moment you do this process of Anulom Vilom, you are improving the oxygen level inside the body, and then you are, improving your ability to fight any kind of, antibody that is entering it. Apart from that, how do you move the lymphatic fluid inside the body? So the contraction of the body is very important, and also, reversing the flow of the body as well. So for example, you can do a very simple thing called Viparit Karni in yoga. If you just lie down by the side of, the mat, by the wall, and just lift your feet up. Now all the fluid, the lymphatic fluid, is flowing from your feet towards your, upper body. And most of the lymphatic system, the spleen, etc., is based, which is the filter, is based in the abdomen. So by doing just this simple process, you are, improving the lymphatic flow of the fluid. If you want to improve it a little further, you can lift yourself up in what's called a Sarvangasa. That will improve again a little more the, the flow of the lymphatic fluid. Apart from that, how do you do things with your upper body to, improve the lymphatic fluid? So one is just lifting your body in Tadasana. You can do that standing, or you can just, and do it few times. The moment you move your shoulders like this, you are again, improving the, lymphatic fluid movement inside. And then also the spinal twists are very good. So, the initial one I talked about twisting the spine sideways like this. See, the entire abdominal and the torso region is contracting and expanding when you are doing this. So these are a few things. Of course, Surya Namaskar I talked about already. These are the few simple things which you will do. They will improve the immunity. In terms of nutrition, also now there is more medical research. So they are saying vitamin C. Our Ayurveda talks about, Amla and its benefits. So you should take, vitamin C and zinc, which is not easily available because even the soil quality has got, deprived of zinc. So what you can do, maybe you can take a supplement at this point of time to improve the zinc inside. But otherwise, zinc is also found in, many nuts and seeds like the pumpkin seeds, the sunflower seeds. So these things, if you do, you are improving, the zinc, and Amla or vitamin C is also improving your immunity. So these are very simple things you can do at this point of time to, of course, you have to maintain the other things like social distancing and, being, away from a crowd. So these are my recommendations for some of the few things that you can do to improve your immunity.
And these look so doable, viewers, don't they? And it doesn't require too much proficiency. It doesn't require an instructor near you. It's just about taking deep breaths, doing it in the right manner, expanding your lungs, and just increasing the oxygen flow and the energy. And that brings me to another interesting aspect, Achal, of the subtle interplay. When we talk about yoga, we talk about quietening of the mind.
Right.
And it is, said in the ancient scriptures, and it's been said at so many places, that mind is like a monkey, it hops. And so yoga is supposed to help us to quieten, sthir hona. At the same time, it is supposed to be energy giving.
Right.
What is this interesting interplay? Because intuitively, the two sound very different. You're pushing energy, you're creating a lot of red factor, if I say. And on the other hand, is the soft blue or the green factor. So what is this interplay of the two forces?
Absolutely. I think you are touching something which is, very important and very, part of the ancient wisdom and very different from how the West approaches it. So if you look at, Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, there are only 2 or 3 sutras about a physical asana that he's talking about. First says that sthir sukham asana, that which is stable, still, and comfort giving is the posture. If you want your mind to be meditative, you can't be in a position of a lot of effort. And the whole idea of, having stillness in posture for a longer time is designed to make the mind quiet. So for example, when you are holding a posture like this still for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever, you are influencing the mind. So the body is psychosomatic. Whatever happens to the mind happens to the body. For example, if you consume alcohol, it is being consumed in the body, but in the impact of it is in the mind. Similarly, if you make the mind quiet, your body becomes quiet. If you make the body quiet, then the mind becomes quiet as well. So one was the, Sthir Sukham Asana. And whenever you are practicing yoga, you should always understand that, only when you are comfortable in a position, that is yoga and posture. And that will only happen that when you can breathe with ease in that posture. So I will demonstrate in a bit, about what I am talking about. So when mind is quiet, you would have observed your breath is also deeper. So the quietness of the mind leads to a deeper breath, and a deeper breath leads to a deeper posture. So your posture is actually coming from it is an outward manifestation of the quietness of your mind. And that's what, how the Indian approach is different. People think that if I'm able to do a certain posture, it only feeds their ego perfectly. For example, if people say that I want to do a headstand, you don't need to do a headstand. Whatever benefit comes from Sarvangasana also, come from Sarvangasana as well. So this is where I feel, and the second, sutra which talks about it is that, prayatna shatilyam, the non-effort. Non-effort will actually take you deeper into a posture. And again, I will demonstrate to you in a bit. Why prayatna shatilyam and anant samapatti bhyam. That means that, your mental absorption should be to the divine or to be a larger force. And when you do that, then your ego anyway will drop. So ultimately, yoga is about, dropping your ego completely, and your physical posture should actually be a manifestation of the annihilation or the dropping of the ego itself. So, and that's the movement toward self-realization. So I'll just demonstrate. For example, you will observe that, when you are doing something which is called, let's say, Matsyendrasana, you are twisting the body sideways. So when you do it, you will realize that if you try to make too much effort in this posture, then you are making the body more tight, and it is counterproductive to reaching that. So if you do it a little bit more, a sense of, always adjusting your breath, and then you will be able to go deeper into the posture. So I'm just demonstrating, but every viewer can actually experience postures and try to do it with non-effort, and then you will realize that you're actually reaching a deeper position with non-effort. And it should always be Sthir Sukham Asana. That's, for example, I'll show you something which people think is a very difficult posture, but if you're making too much effort in it, then there is no, you can say it's not yoga. See, at this point of time, I'm breathing, in a normal manner. I'm talking to you. I could even read a book. So ultimately, it is not coming from an effort. It is coming from the internal state of mind. I will also demonstrate one, posture which looks very difficult. But people think, their physical flexibility is a part of, physical body. But I would argue that the physical flexibility is part of how can you breathe. Your body reaches a certain position of twist or, of bending, and then you feel that, my physical limit is there. But it's not about the physical limit. You are not able to breathe in that position, and that's where the body is telling you to go back to a normal position so that you can breathe normally. So I will demonstrate to you. It's called Raj Kapotasana. It's one of the biggest or one of the deepest back bends, but it happens, you started from Ustrasana. Now, if my body is able to breathe here, and then it will be, then I adjust my body and I try to go deeper. If my body is able to breathe here, then I can go deeper. If my body is able to, breathe here, then I can go still more deep. So you see what's happening. I'm still able to breathe. But if I was not able to breathe, then my body will not go back there. So I think if each one of us is given anesthesia, you would be able to probably do even this posture, because you're not conscious of your breath. The stiffness in the body is coming from the stiffness in the mind. And that's what, I suggest, and that's what I teach in my class, that, you focus more on your breath. Breathe, reach a position, allow the body to breathe normally, allow the body to, breathe well, and then the body will be ready to go deeper. But where does this deep breath come from? It will only come from the quietness of the mind. So ultimately, your posture will become an outward manifestation of the quietness inside the mind. And the quietness inside the mind is a loop back or a feedback of your quiet body itself. So that's what, would be, my suggestion to viewers, that, approach it with Prayatna Shatilyam, understand it from the depth of the text. India has really a large, reservoir of ancient wisdom. There are many schools of yoga across the country. If people are serious and they want to learn, they will have many destinations to go to, and that's where, tourism and yoga can become a good mix. India has something very unique to offer.
I was going to, in fact, come to that. But viewers, don't you agree with me that every single webinar that we do, and of course, yoga is something entirely else. Every time we just discover how wealthy, what a treasure trove our civilization is. It is so humbling, even as an Indian. And I'm sure to all the viewers who will be seeing this, rather even live or maybe later, it's just incredible. And that's why I think Incredible India. And Achal, you started on a point that I was going to come to, because we run these webinars from the Ministry of Tourism, and therefore understanding the different treasures of India and how to make them into, a product from the point of view of tourism is very critical. And if you could, from your own life journey, I know that you were a corporate guy, and then you were the regular IIM MBA. How did you switch over, and how's the journey been, and how would you recommend to a lot of our people who are wanting to be entrepreneurs of tourism? And I would also remind viewers at this juncture that this is all about vocal for local. This is about being Atmanirbhar. This is about depending on those very strengths of our country and making a living out of them. And what a life to live too. Achal, your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. So, my journey into yoga began, when I started to, typically I've seen it not only in myself, but, roughly when people start their careers, till some point of time, they are very, very interested in the growth and the, the benefits that the corporate life brings you, or the life brings you. You start earning money, and then you are, everything else is kind of falling into place. I've observed that, when you start, to be in your 30s, then there are certain challenges of life which you start challenging you, whether it is your health, which is your personal relationships, and then you see something deeper, some deeper meaning in yourself, which you want to pursue. I mean, it may happen, it may not happen, I'm not saying, but to me it happened that, I was almost at the peak of my corporate career. I was the head of or CEO of a TV channel in India. And at that point of time, I realized that, I was spending a lot of time on work, and I was not spending any time on my health. And that's why then I reprioritized my life. I said that, I want to, live a healthy and balanced life. And that's when I quit, and I started to look at things which brought me closer to what I really enjoyed. For example, nature was one. So I, at that point of time, I was lucky enough to build a resort in a forest reserve in Pench, and be close to nature and offer people that proximity to nature as well. Later on also, I participated, and I co-founded a yoga house in Bombay, which is the leading yoga studio in the country right now. And so these are the things that what I thought that I enjoy doing, and that's how I kind of evolved into it. Even now, I'm heading a social impact company called Greenway. It's an access to clean energy company. It has a social impact. It alleviates the life of women by giving them access to clean energy, and also it is environment friendly. So I'm doing things which I strongly believe in, and that's how my journey. That's a little bit about my own journey. But people who are interested in in yoga and the destinations, and they want to learn more about it, I would briefly talk about the yoga schools that exist across the country. So there are two main branches of yoga, one called Ashtanga Yoga and one is, the Hatha Yoga. And, the BKS Iyengar school in Pune and the Ashtanga school in Mysore has made these two places, primary destinations for yoga and people who want to learn yoga. Also people who want to become teachers as well. Apart from that, Rishikesh is another center which is very, very popular right from the times of Beatles for, understanding the mysticism and the ancient wisdom of India, as well as now it has become a big center for yoga. Apart from that, you have Dharamsala, you have Goa, you have Kerala. These are the traditional, places which are known for yoga, and most of yoga tourism from across the world and from domestically from India is happening to these places. But I feel India has got even more destinations because we have certain unique things. For example, we have our own ancient wisdom. We have a very deep culture which is there in form of our music, in form of in our dance forms. We have also a bounty of nature. We have deserts, we have forests, we have beaches, we have mountains. So we have everything that makes it conducive to a practice of yoga, learning yoga in a better manner. And that's where I feel that we can broad base the destinations that there are in the country right now. For example, I feel Khajuraho is such a lovely place to have all these elements. It has the Panna Tiger Reserve near to it. It has a very, very deep cultural backdrop to it. And if we, let's say, build yoga infrastructure in terms of maybe yoga studios, or maybe have yoga teachers placed there who could develop it as a center, then Pondicherry is another one, Pushkar is another one, whole of Rajasthan is there, whole of Himachal Pradesh, whole of Sikkim as an organic state. So I think there is a need to broad base it, to have more centers which offer not only the learning of yoga but also a yogic lifestyle, so that people from across the world and people from domestically as well get encouraged to travel to these places. Rupinder.
Yeah, I think, that sets a lot of our viewers thinking, I'm sure. And especially for today, I am going to thank our viewers, especially for today, for logging in. It's a Sunday and we are doing back-to-back webinars. So all of you who've logged in tells me that, there is so much interest around yoga in all of you. And at this juncture, I really must, say something from Patanjali, because yoga is our wealth. And yoga is something that we can build upon so much. I think, Achal, if you can even tell our viewers on how it has taken on the international imagination, and not only from now, but it's been there for decades. There are these swanky studios, there are resorts, there are all places. And I think somewhere, in fact, in India, we've only recently come to own it up as something that we need to showcase to the world. And you mentioned about how in India it is played out differently because it is within us. It is not just a manifestation in a physical form. And would you like to, bring in that element, that how can people really transform their lives literally by developing this as a tourism product?
Yes, I think, if you look at it, yoga, of course, is an Indian treasure, but the organized form of yoga started more in the West. So if you look at the number of yoga studios, the number of, yoga practitioners, they are much more in the West. But the trend is catching up again in India. So for example, I'll give you some numbers. In the US, there are about 30 million people who practice yoga as, daily or on a regular basis. If not daily, then at least on a regular basis. So you can, and the organized form of having studios so that people could, practice it on a regular basis, have access to it. West has much more better infrastructure for that. Yoga House actually was one of the first studios, and in fact, it is the only one which, was currently before COVID offering about 6 classes a day in Bombay. And I've seen this trend changing. Initially, we used to have more Westerners coming into practice, but now it's much more, about 90% are actually Indians, and they've understood the benefits of it, especially when they are living in a metro and stressful lives in Bombay, Delhi, and when all other factors are kind of pushing your health down. you need some kind of a supplement which can improve your not only physical health but also your mental health. I think a lot of happenings in the recent times have brought our focus to depression and the mental health. So yoga is one of the best tools for achieving that. So I feel from a Western perspective, it is something which the West started to organize a little bit. I would give a lot of credit to Baba Ramdev as well, because he started conducting these morning classes, and all across the country he's held these camps, which actually brought a lot of awareness about yoga. So I would say this started probably something around 2000, and maybe after that there was definitely a push to the awareness of yoga. And then people were initially just thinking it's something you do free of cost in some mandir or something. But now people have started to understand its value, and they've started to even pay for it. They've started to pay to become teachers and to go to retreats. So yoga as a product is continuing to evolve. It has evolved a lot. I mean, I have seen its evolution from 2012 when I founded the Yoga House, and now it is there are so many yoga studios even in Bombay. So this is an evolving thing, and I think with the interest of the viewers for subjects like yoga, with their participation, it's very clearly evident that people are now taking to it, and if they adopt it, then they will not only be addressing their physical health, but mental, emotional, and spiritual health when they have to actually deal with challenges of life, as to changes in life such as even death. Then yoga is something which helps you to address all aspects of your life and even your death. So I would say it's something which is ancient wisdom always suggested that we should look for our own moksha. We should be progressing on that path. It's yoga is, and the organized yoga is just a way to kind of propel you into that direction.
Yes, and that's such a intense, in fact, subject to talk of, and isn't Mahamrityunjay mantra all about that?
Right.
On putting the bonds, right?
Right.
And viewers, I think that gives us a huge perspective on how to develop, to own up something that's our own, and not only just make it a way of life, but also make life out of it. And I'm going to just pick a few lines very loosely. They come out of the Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. When you are inspired by some great purpose, some extraordinary project, all your thoughts break their bonds. Your mind transcends limitations. Your consciousness expands in every direction, and you find yourself in a new, great, and wonderful world. Dormant forces, faculties, and talents come alive, and you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. That's a very loose translation out of the Yoga Sutra, but it also brings me to another aspect, viewers, which we, I believe, as Indians, should not only own up for ourselves, but it's almost our duty to carry this ancient wealth to the rest of the world in times when peace and harmony keeps getting challenged every now and then. India as a civilization has been harbinger of peace. In fact, last year we celebrated the 150 years of the birth of the Mahatma. He's been the carrier of the entire peace movement. And now, again, as a country, we are trying to create the same peace and the harmony. And that tells us also an important aspect of what we are as a people. 2015, when the first International Yoga Day happened at the organized global level, the theme was harmony and peace. And this 2016 was about connect the youth. 17 was about health. 18 was about peace again. And 19 was for the heart. And this time it's for yoga at home. And so I think as a civilization, as a culture, as a people, the way we have evolved down centuries and centuries, we must carry the message of yoga and how it connects, how it brings people together at a very different level. Achal, there are so many questions and people are loving this session. And I'm going to take you back to the physical part of it. Mm-hmm. One of our viewers, Meera, has been asking a question around, can you suggest some asanas for the eye, the neck, And I'm going to push that a little more and say, I asked this on Friday also. We started a session on Friday, Achal, with Bharat Thakur and Professor Pandya and Professor Dr. Joshi joining us from Uttarakhand. So that's where we kick-started the International Yoga Day 2020. At that webinar also, many people asked what's spondylitis. Because that's a very common found problem these days with the way we sit and the way we work. Can you just help us to look at a few asanas?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first to address the eye, for addressing obviously the movements of the eye, we neglect the movements of the eye. So if you were a trained Kathakali dancer, obviously, you would be practicing the eye movements to the core and you would have a nice eyesight. But if you look at it, just moving the eyes up and down, and holding it there for a few moments so the eye muscles get trained, and then taking them to the extreme, to the left and to the right. Even these simple eye movements will improve the eye and the muscles inside the eye. Apart from that, there is a practice called Tratak, where you hold a candle, you put a candle in front and you just keep looking at it directly at that candle for a long time without blinking your eyes. That in itself would, improve the eyesight on its own. Apart from that, there is one Ayurvedic, cleaning of the eye. So what you could do is you could, rinse. You can put Triphala inside water, and just kind of remove the Triphala and have clear water, and just dip your eyes and just open them and close them, and that will kind of clean the insides of the eyes. So these are some of very basic things you can do for your eye. And for the neck, I was telling you about the neck movements, like the movement to the right, movement to the left, up and down. That improves your neck movement, the muscles in the neck as well. Now we come to spondylitis, and mostly the problem is our posture is wrong. We are always hunching, especially when you are sitting in front of the computer, you're hunching. And just look at what happens when you hunch. It's not only compromising your neck position, but also you are constricting your lungs. So whatever was the capacity of the lungs, you have maybe made it some 70% of it from the original capacity. So a good posture is very, very important. So what you can do for a good posture, when you are sitting, instead of sitting at the back of the chair, so I don't have the chair right now, but instead of sitting at the back of the chair when you are kind of slouching and sitting at it, you start to sit at the edge of the chair. So at the front end of the chair, and if you have a chair near you, you can just experience it right now. If you sit at the front edge of the chair with your hips on the chair, you will see that your spine has straightened on its own. So one is that you can do. Secondly, sitting in the chair itself, if you can expand your arms, hold it from the back, just surround it from the back, you will open up your chest and your posture will be better. So I think any posture that brings your shoulder blades together, expands the chest, is good. Another very good posture for the shoulder area is what we call the downward dog or Adho Mukhi Swanasana. So here you just place your palms onto the mat. Just align your feet with the palm. Just check that your right foot is aligned with the right palm, the left with the left. You push your tailbone up, and then you drop your head deeper and lower. As you start dropping it deeper and lower, you will see that your shoulder blade is coming together, and you are in what is called a downward dog position. And that kind of helps the movement in the shoulder area. This is obviously a little deep, but mostly if you can even do it like that and hold it for a longer time, that will help you to improve the shoulder area. I will tell you another asana which improves that shoulder and neck area, which is called Gomukhasana. So you just take your right palm, place it behind your spine. The back of the palm faces your back, and you place it just a little behind the spine. You take the other arm up, the left arm up, you engage your fingers. So if you want to look at it from behind, you're like that. Now, if you hold this posture for a little longer, you will see that you are correcting your spinal alignment. You're also correcting your posture. So hold it for as long as you can, and that will help you to improve. If you are not able to reach this, what you could do is you could just hold it with a piece of cloth or something like that. You can just hold it like that and slowly try to bring your fingers together. So these are some of the very simple, asanas that could address the, neck area and, help you to, avoid problems like spondylitis.
Thank
Also,
you.
when you are putting the computer, just put it at the eye level and not that you have to look down. So just, have the computer at the eye level. That will also help you to some
Very,
very simple.
very valuable, Achal. I think most of us run into trouble with our neck part. I think there's stiffness because we are just working in front of computers too much or just not doing enough with ourselves, I
Right,
guess.
right, right.
No, that's an amazing input. I'm sure viewers, you are benefiting from a live demo. In fact, today morning, the Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji addressed the nation on occasion of the International Yoga Day 2020. And following his address, there was a demonstration of a 45-minute common yoga protocol by a team from the Morarji Desai National Institute of Yoga that was taken up. So there's just so much wealth to pick up around, and viewers, all you need to do is to just log on and do just that little effort. Later in the day, at the Permanent Mission of India to the United Nations is also holding an online celebration of the 6th International Yoga Day. It goes live from 3 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's the US Standard Time. It's going to be on the UN Web TV. So that itself shows us the kind of presence yoga has, or how much yoga is valued by people around the world. So I think doesn't it make you so proud to be an Indian on this, that this is the best gift that we could have given to the world? And so let's just do it. I see no reason why we should not just bring it into our everyday lives, even when we are sitting, working, traveling in a car, train, bus. Just deep breathe, expand your lungs and feel healthier. Isn't Achal, is that the right way to sort of incorporate yoga into one's life?
Absolutely. I think, the what we call Anulom Vilom, or, the another form of it is what is Vipassana. We can do it with consciously and with deeper breaths. And, you can do it anywhere in, whether you are sitting in a bus, whether you're traveling, even in the office, you can take just a few minutes off and, just, recenter yourself. I think we have to incorporate it in, day-to-day life much more than, what you do for 1 hour on the mat itself. That is also important. But apart from that, you need to be attentive every moment of your life. You have to light that lamp of consciousness that makes you aware, alert in every moment of your life. And I think, the attention on the breath, as you were talking about, is one of the most important tools to, recenter yourself, bring your attention back into your consciousness. So yeah, I think we need to incorporate it into, everyday life, and that's how it should be.
So I can't believe that we're almost at the end of time. We're actually almost at 12 noon. And I am definitely going to thank you so much for spending a valuable 1 hour. And I'm sure we've all benefited, viewers. We're going to keep pushing for yoga because somewhere I believe that while we all do what we do, but it tends to, sort of recede in our sense of priorities. And so tomorrow again at 11 a.m., we're going to bring you another yoga practitioner. Ira Trivedi is going to spend 1 hour with us tomorrow. So do log in for that. But in the meantime, before we leave, Achal, one question which I'm sure everybody will want us to answer is that do you think after COVID, when we sort of reboot and when we are looking at a sustainable world, and there's a lot of learnings out of every disaster, there are opportunities. And so is this the right time for India then to go ahead, and for India as tourism particularly, to go ahead and carry forward the message of yoga?
Absolutely. I feel, we have got so much to share, not only in terms of, what it can do to us spiritually, but also to fight, the pandemic with physical health, that, people will turn to it. And I'm seeing the change already. So people who were actually practicing yoga through yoga studios are there, the online yoga classes have actually become more packed than, what the physical classes were, because, online is anyway removing that limitation. So now sometimes when I do online classes, people not only from Bombay, but from Seattle and from Patna and from, Philippines are able to log in at the same time and do yoga. So I think, technology is providing us a new opportunity as well. But yes, we should, dig deeper into the ancient Indian places and, bring those closer to the bigger audience across the world. So, they come to India, they experience it firsthand, understand how many mystics have walked through this wonderful holy land. And, that will not only be good for tourism, but for their own personal journey towards their own self-realization. So that's what I feel, is the future, and it will not only, provide tourism, but also a light to the entire world.
Right. Thank you so much. I'm going to say namaskar, join hands, namaste. Namaste,
Namaste.
world, namaste, India, namaste, viewers. And we're going to play a very short little movie. So let's see that, Team NEGD.
Incredible India.
Okay, so that's technology, always has some glitches. And that's why coming back and being together physically is also a very critical part. But in the meantime, as we always say, because we're still battling with COVID, सतर्क रहिए, स्वस्थ रहिए, अपना ध्यान रखिए और हमारे साथ जुड़े रहिए, बने रहिए, देखते रहिए अपना सुंदर अतुल्य भारत. This is incredible India. Thank you, Achal. Thank you, viewers, for spending a Sunday morning with us. Thank you very much. Namaste. Namaste, India.